Hello, welcome to Speaking Opera. My name is Howard Hart, and I'll be your host today. My special guest is Octavio Roca. Octavio Roca has been a music and dance critic for the Washington Post, the Washington Times, and the San Francisco Chronicle, and a frequent contributor to Opera News, Dance Magazine, and Musical America. He is the author of Cuban Ballet and a book that we'll be discussing today, Scotto, More Than a Diva. Welcome, Octavio Roca.
Oh, Howard, so good to see you again. It's been too long.
So tell us, how did Scotto, More Than a Diva, come about?
Oh my God, that's a fun memory for me, actually. I was still at Georgetown in grad school in philosophy, but I was writing reviews for the Washington Post. And at that time, what I was writing wasn't about music, it was about ballet. I had sold the book to Athenaeum, a publisher back then, which is dead now, on Alicia Alonso, the great Cuban ballerina. I had gone to Cuba to work on this book. I came back totally blocked because of what I saw in Cuba, which you don't want to talk about right now. So there I was, blocked, which is a bad thing to be when you're a young writer and you haven't written anything. And then out of the blue, I got this call from New York from Renata's agent, because apparently they had had a big book on Pavarotti. And Renata was then Queen of the Met, as you know. And I got this phone call from Ernie Gilbert saying, Miss Scotto would like to meet you. Can you come to New York and talk to her? I said, yes, I think I can do that. And to make that long story short, the book was dropped in my lap. Doubleday agreed that I should write it. Scotto wanted me to write it. And there was my next book. I put aside the Alicia Alonso book. And in fact, I wouldn't go back to it for decades. I wanted to make sure the regime that's there wasn't there anymore, at the very least, that I was freer to write. But thanks to Renata, I got my mind out of Cuba. And I wrote one of the happiest books of my life. I mean, it's just a really all good experience working on the book. I went off to Gonzaga to talk to her and do all the interviews. That's, Lorenzo's hometown. And it was such a fun experience because Gonzaga is a basic little Italian town. You have your church, your hotel, your communist party. It was just surrealistic and wonderful. And then I came back and wrote the book. That's the story of that one. But I had the best time working on the book. I had the best time getting to know Renata. And then, of course, because of the book, watching her work on various roles, watching how she put together those roles, my respect for her as an artist. I mean, I felt so privileged I got to watch that backstage and to see how she put these roles together. And it was just one of the great experiences of my life, frankly.
He was a very controversial artist in many ways. I think given her early years in the soubrette roles and the lighter roles, moving on into the lyrico spinto and even eventually she sang Clytemnestra, and she really sang many roles. And I think that, how do you feel about that as far as her voyage or her journey in opera and performance?
I think unlike others, actually, she knew what she was doing. She knew her voice. I think she willed it into the size that it became. She was never going to be bigger than Nielsen. Come on. On the other hand, she wasn't Tebaldi. She wasn't Franny. She was her own diva, more than a diva, actually. So I think the way her transition to bigger roles and stronger roles, she was very careful always to sing them in the right house with the right blocking, frankly, knowing where to stand and never really betraying anything. Her Norma, which was very controversial, for example, I thought was amazing. And was it perfect? No, but neither was Callas. And the interesting thing about the way that she was put up as against Callas, once Callas was gone, actually, is silly because she was the closest thing to a Callas that we had. And that's it. I mean, I haven't seen one come around now. Let's not talk about Netrebko and her telebundunes in acting. I think Renata was the real thing. She really was a sincere actress, and she could act. But she never let it get in the way of the singing, and she was a real singer. She knew how to control the legato, how to control the portamento. It was perfect. And she knew how to sing a role so It really was what the composer would have wanted. And she knew how to read music, which, you can't say about all of them either. But I really do think she, more than anyone I've ever met in opera, and I've met a lot of singers, knew where she was going, and she knew how she wanted to get there. And that's what we're grateful she actually did, because frankly, she did sing an amazing variety of roles. And every single one of them was something unforgettable. You might have other favorites in those roles, but Renata was always one, oh my God, I hadn't thought of that. Or, oh my God, isn't that perfect? Isn't that nice? Yeah. It's just wonderful. I sound like a fan because I really was, and I am. But the truth is, when you come up with an artist like that, and that's in every field, in theater and ballet and opera, in movies for that matter, you may as well stick to your love because you know why it's there. And generally, it rewards you so many times, again and again and again, to enjoy that artistry and get so much out of that artistry. And that's what I got with Renata. I'm grateful to her.
I agree. We're on the same page.
Well, I know you are, yeah.
I truthfully, I'm, the years have passed and things have changed. And I interviewed Renata for radio, and I was on NYC, and it's actually on Speaking Opera on YouTube, the interview. And she talks about wanting to sing Carmen, which she had never met. Yeah, it's on the interview. It's in her, she's talking. But what comes back to me when I listen to it, and I will also say the same thing, if I may follow your lead, I am a total fan of Renata Scotto. I have never, she's sung so many performances that have literally touched me so deeply that I still remember them as if they were yesterday. And Norma, it's interesting how fickle the public is and can be cruel. Regina Resnick said, opera is a phenomenally difficult sport. Regina Resnick. And it is. It is. And she sang the Norma, and I was there opening night. It was very sad, very sad. But then a few months later, she sang in the Trittico. She was the first soprano at the Metropolitan to sing all three roles in the same night.
Yes.
In the Trittico. And the audiences went wild. They were all sold out. It was as if the Norma had never happened. And I remember being there. It was so long ago, 1981. Yeah. Just a few years ago, right? But I remember being there. I went to all of them. I went to all the Normas too, and they did get better. By the third Norma, she had worked out a lot of the issues that she had. And the audience was impossible on opening night. It was something I've never experienced that again, quite like that. But she had she was triumphant. She knew how to make things work. And I wish I had that kind of strength. If I may be narcissistic enough to say this, I wish if my life had had that kind of strength, I probably would have had a better outcome. I don't know, but whatever she determined to do, she did. And I think for us who loved her as a soprano and as a woman, we can appreciate that.
Well, that Trittico, I mean, it was all amazing. It's one of those things that once in a lifetime experiences, but when in Il Tabarro in particular, which should not have been her role vocally, she comes on stage and you know exactly who that woman was just from the way she moved. You know how the drama is going to go. You know what this woman's possibilities are, what she can possibly do within those material conditions, to get a Marxist term about it. In other words, she knew who every character in the Trittico was. And by the time we get to Miss Angelica, of course, is ecstatic. And I cannot imagine ever experiencing one better than that. And I would hope it gets to see that are close enough, because, the score will remain. It's always going to be there. We're going to see new people. But it's so good to have that example. And it's so good to have that memory. And it's a memory that I do have in my brain, in my ears, hearing her do those roles. It was just amazing. And, for a while, she really was the owner of so many roles. I mean, when you think of Manon Lescaut, Norma, Macbeth, that Trittico alone, Don Carlo, for God's sake, and all of them are a golden age that I think we should all acknowledge. It really was a golden age of the Met. because she did stay for personal reasons, family reasons. She stayed in New York more than she might have gone back to Europe or not. She wanted to take care of her children. And in New York, it really was those Levine years were something we could all look back on and go, oh my God, I don't care what else is going on in anybody's personal life. But in terms of music and drama, there were high points of the century, I think.
You bring back so many memories, Octavio. I we're very fortunate to have, and Francesca de Rimini, which I loved so much. It was one of her great performances, but watching her and being fortunate, the one thing that is wonderful about Renata's career is so much of it has been documented. Strangely enough, Madame Butterfly, which is one of her great roles, was never videotaped. The
I know
performance
that is a crime.
strange, you know.
That is such a crime. And the last one she did at the Met, which is like she brought back her production. I mean, with the basic cast party afterwards, but I mean, that was a crime that it wasn't preserved, because how
they should have done a video. And there's probably one hidden somewhere we don't know about. Somebody probably has one.
I've looked, trust me.
The advantage we have, I think, of having so many videos is we have documentation of the greatness of her performances. I remember I guess we could talk about a lot of things now as time goes on, but I remember and I want to thank Bob Lombardo and his crew for those passes when I couldn't get in. Somehow I always get in, and I went to the last Men on Lescaut, and it was completely sold out. They had given away all of the free tickets. That the musicians got some free tickets, and the standing room was so packed that there were people beyond. People were like on the stairs, and they were coming. You have to move in, and it was packed. It was like they had let even extra people in, beyond the people in the standing room. But I'll never forget those Men on Lescaut as long as I live. I mean, I don't think anyone's come anywhere near that. So
no, they haven't. And it's funny because back then also the Met used to tour, so a lot of people got to see her. Manolo Lescaut and Tosca, but there she traveled. I remember one Trovatore at Wolf Trap in Virginia, and she spent the whole performance covering her neck because it was very windy. That was with Bergonzi, by the way. It was an amazing performance, but all I remember is Renata going like this, throughout the performance. One time, she cooked pasta for everybody after Tosca at the Watergate, and she cooked for everybody because she got very, very thin. She just didn't eat. She ate very little. But good pasta with good olive oil doesn't get you fat. And I remember having just fun memories of. She knew it had been a good performance. She knew it was like fabulous, and there we all were in the kitchen at the Watergate eating and cooking with Renata. And that was just wonderful. And she was going to do it again and do it again. Those tours with the Met, the country was better for it. It's a crime they don't do that anymore, because I mean, so many people, so many Americans got to be introduced to opera with the very best. Those tours.
Should friends be jealous of each other? When Renata was to sing Norma not Norma, I'm sorry. When Renata was to sing Tosca at the Met, something happened, I think with, I can't remember, there was a strike of some sort. So anyway, it was canceled. So she never sang Tosca at the Met. She did sing it in the park with the Met. However, she did sing it in Philadelphia. And I went to the first Tosca she sang in Philadelphia, and she cooked for us too. I was with Ernie Gilbert and she cooked, and he said, Renata's cooking. I said, what? And he said, come to the house. It actually was where I was staying. We were staying with friends. And she came to the house and she cooked the whole dinner for like 8 of us. She didn't want any help. She was in the kitchen. And I'll never forget those times ever. And Diaz was the Scarpia, and he was amazing. He was really fantastic. They were amazing. She was really something. And that has been, you can find that on audio, but not video, unfortunately. But she was amazing. So that was her first Tosca. Performance in Philadelphia. She looked wonderful, and it was that period,
But she managed to look taller. I don't know how she did.
She wore the shoes. Remember the shoes?
Yes, she was not a tall person. She is, I mean, she's very much with us, but I mean, not a tall woman. It's all right, but she looked tall.
Yeah.
I
She
remember,
sang tall.
no,
She sang tall, I think.
sang, okay,
I'm joking,
she sang
but I'm
tall.
not really actually. I mean, she had a persona. When Renata was on stage, you knew she was on stage. She was one of those singers that you saw her. Even when
Right.
she sang Musetta, oftentimes, especially in the Zeffirelli production, when they first did
Yeah,
the opening night, or the new production, or the production now that's been around for years, I should say.
yeah.
When she came out, she just stole with all those people on stage. You couldn't take your eyes off her.
I know. And there was Carreras and there was Stratas, there was everybody else. It didn't
Wonderful.
matter.
That was a
It didn't matter. But we went to see Valkyrie together when they met on tour, that old ring,
mhm.
and it was James Morris.
Oh.
And she told me the role I'd like to sing is Botan. And
Should I be surprised? No.
actually, no, she liked the Botan's farewell. That's a really good role. It's like, yes or not, I know it is. No, don't touch it. Somebody shouted Brava Calas, the Luisa
Mhm.
Miller
Mhm.
performance. It was a broadcast. But there she has Cheryl Mills to get a hold of. And Cheryl was very kind and very supportive. So she actually got herself together and kept singing through. And it didn't matter.
She didn't miss a beat.
The riot that was in the opening at Norma, that was different. But she was alone on stage. Casa Diva is such a cruel entrance aria for any singer. And there she was all alone, people screaming. There was a lot of arrests that night, I think.
It was what?
Arrests that night.
Mhm.
They actually rounded
It
up
was
people.
people, it was out of control. I've never, ever, in my all the years I've been to opera, I've been to a lot, I've never seen an audience so out of control. I almost wonder if some of it was,
Oh,
organized ahead of time, because there
I don't
was so
know.
much yelling and
I
screaming.
think it must have been.
Yeah, and poor Tatiana Troyanos was a nervous wreck. She was never known for having calm nerves to begin with.
I know.
Wonderful singer, great singer. But it's amazing that they even got through it. What amazed me about that Norma, and I say this in all due respect to Renata, is she got through it. She did not, like the Louisa Miller, she did not allow the audience to rule her in a cruel sort of way. And I'm sure it had to have been painful. I remember Negri, she almost never canceled Renata. And Negri sang the broadcast of that Norma, which was a very good call, because they would have been out again. So
Yeah, no, they would have been. It was unfortunate, and the truth is, it turns out to be one of her great roles in an unusual way.
mhm.
Troyano, she was not altogether there emotionally all the time, and that was very tough on her, on everybody. But what can you do? Other things later, it's interesting. I mean, Macbeth, which I think was better in London than at the Met, but the Peter Hall production was really daring for its day. It reproduced the 19th century sensibility that Verdi might have recognized. But I'll never forget this one time I was backstage and I was at the Sitzprobe, and I witnessed a little fit that I was not planning on. I walk in innocently, and there's Renata in her wig. And she goes, "What do you think?" And oh, it looks really sweet. Wrong answer. You see, sweet. Lady Macbeth is not sweet. Rip, whack. And the wig maker. And it was like, oh my God, what have I started? No, it's true. She should not have been sweet, and that was not supposed to be sweet. Look, it wasn't. It was nicely done. That production changed a lot over the years. They brought it back. They took out the flying witches.
Yes,
They brought it back. They took out a few things. I think they should have just stuck by their guns, and do it.
it was a strange, it was such a strange production. And I remember the audience at the end, Renata got and Cheryl Mills was fabulous. They both got wonderful applause at the end. But when Levine came out, he got some boos, probably because he allowed it to happen. But when Peter Hall came out, or I believe he was there for the opening night,
Hall, yeah.
but
Yeah,
somebody who was
Oh,
involved with the direction. Not everyone loved it, but the Flying Witches and a lot of that went away, and they covered up. Remember the lady that was naked? She
yes.
was in rehearsal because Erica Miner actually did an interview with Speaking Opera, and she was a violinist in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, and she talks about that Macbeth and how I remember that the rehearsal, the dancer with the electric lights in her hair, remember her? She was completely naked, and then they eventually covered her up. But the whole orchestra tried to look up, and Levine stopped the orchestra from playing. He said, "All right, everybody get up and take a look and sit down again so we can continue." Because they were all trying to look at this woman who had no clothes on. But they did eventually get rid of some of the Flying Witches and the talking head. Remember the talking head up above?
Yes. Very good thing we didn't have holograms at that point. They would have had a hologram that Lawrence was in that musical. Did you ever see Scotto's director?
Direction.
Yeah,
Or is it? No, actually, I didn't. Unfortunately, no.
she directed a Sonambula in Miami.
Uh-huh.
A soprano that was not at all like Scotto.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so good in directing her the way the soprano could sing it. And it was actually really amazing how she did know how to move groups. She did know how to make people on stage look their best.
Mm-hmm.
And this is with a singer and an actress that wasn't at all like Renata. And she made that production probably better than it could have been. It was just amazing to watch that. She's a very, very intelligent teacher.
This has really been fun, and it's brought back so many memories.
Oh my God. Ah,
And I hope to have you back again, and I'll talk to Bob Lombardo and see if we can get him to join us, and we could do something maybe around Renata's birthday.
would be nice.
Do a video. We can do it via Zoom. Also, when I do want to see you when I'm down in Washington.
You have to, please. If I'm in town, I'm here. We travel too much, but I'm around a lot. I'm here all of August because I have to finish this book. As I told you, I already bought Covent Garden tickets and Paris Opera tickets and Toulouse Opera. It's all right. So there are more travels coming, but we should be in town more often. And again, please, let's not lose touch.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you called me for this.
This is wonderful. Thank you, Octavio Roca, and we will get together again.
Yes, we will.
Ciao.
Ciao.
This is your host, Howard Hart. On July 31st, 2023, Octavio Roca and I recorded our podcast, Scotto, More Than a Diva, at WCAT Studios. During the editing period for the podcast, we learned of the passing of Renata Scotto on August 16th, 2023. We dedicate this podcast to the memory of our beloved Renata, who will live in our hearts forever.
Speaking Opera focuses on documenting the career activities of currently active singers, composers, musicians, and authors in the field of operatic performance and scholarship, and specialists in the field of audio recording, as well as those who have retired fully or partially from performing and/or teaching. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.